We don't owe, we are owed, brothers and sisters of the soil, freedom fighters of truth. Welcome to Simply African Channel. Why the US doesn't pay its debts and why Africa should neither. We have gathered here not just to speak, but to awaken, to stir the hearts of those still asleep in economic chains. Because today, I rise to ask a bold question. If the United States of America can owe trillions and never pay, why should Africa be forced to pay debts that were never hers to begin with? Let us tell the truth plainly. The US government owes over $34 trillion, but does it panic? Do they sell their lands, their companies, their sovereignty? No. They simply raise the debt ceiling, print more money, or shift the burden to the rest of the world. Meanwhile, African nations with gold, oil, diamonds, and fertile land are told to tighten belts, sell state assets, and cut public spending just to service illegitimate loans made by Western institutions, under Western rules, for Western interests. Let's go back in time. The debts that strangle Africa today were not born in freedom. They were conceived in the womb of colonialism. Congo's crushing debt began with Mobutu, funded and protected by the West. Ghana was forced into structural adjustment programs that privatized its resources. Haiti, the first black republic, was forced to pay reparations to France for daring to free itself from slavery. This is not debt. This is economic warfare. Debt is not about money. It's about control. They use debt to dictate what we grow, what we export, how we educate our children, and even what currencies we use. They reward obedience with aid and punish resistance with sanctions. And yet the same nations demanding repayment have never repaid Africa. They have not repaid for the centuries of stolen labor during slavery. They have not repaid for the millions of lives lost to colonization. They have not repaid for the trillions in wealth extracted from our land. America breaks the rules, but Africa is forced to obey them. Let me be clear, the United States does not repay its debts because it owns the system. It controls the dollar, the world's reserve currency. It dominates the IMF and the World Bank. It backs its economy with military power, not moral legitimacy. But if America can write its own rules, why must Africa be forced to die by theirs? If they can default silently, we can resist loudly. It is time for a new African conversation. A conversation that says, no more debt repayments without justice. No more selling our birthright to pay for someone else's mistake. No more submission to financial colonizers in suits and TIs. If Niger can stand up to France, if Gaddafi dared to build a gold-backed African currency, if Ghana, Zambia, and Ethiopia are rising up to say enough is enough, then so can we. I proclaim today, we don't owe, we are owed, we are not beggars. We are builders. We are not dependent, we are deliberately underdeveloped. Africa does not need pity. Africa needs power. And to build that power, we must declare we will not pay with our future what our ancestors never signed. In the spirit of our ancestors, let the spirits of Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, and Mwalimu Nyerere stand with us today. They did not die so that Africa could be financially enslaved in independence. They died dreaming of a day when Africa would control her own wealth, her own destiny, and her own voice. Let this be our rallying cry. If America can live in luxury and depth, then Africa can live in dignity and freedom. Let us rise from the ashes of debt dependency. Let us call for reparations, not repayments. Let us reject the chains of global financial manipulation and build our own economic systems based on unity, justice, and African dignity. The time is now. Seek ye first the economic kingdom, and the political power shall follow. Africa must rise, not with permission, but with purpose. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Press the notification bell to receive updates. Thank you. One Africa, one people, one destiny. So, can the US survive without world financial bodies? Can the United States survive without the world financial bodies? Yes, because it created, controls, and benefits from them. The US would not collapse without the IMF or World Bank because these institutions were built to serve US and Western interests. The IMF and World Bank were established in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference under US leadership. They promote policies that protect the US dollar, global trade dominance, and Wall Street supremacy. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. 80-90 of all global trade is done in dollars. THA means the US can print more money to pay debts and still attract global investment without facing the same consequences as Africa or Latin America. It has global military and diplomatic influence. The US protects its economic power with military bases in over 70 countries and controls global narratives through media, sanctions, and soft power. If the IMF and World Bank vanished today, America would simply create new tools like it did with NATO, the WTO, or its regional banks, and continue to control trade and capital flows through private markets and bilateral deals. America doesn't need the system. It is the system. Can Africa survive without the world financial organizations? Not only can Africa survive, Africa can thrive. But it must unlearn dependence and embrace self-determination. Here's why. The current financial system is a trap, not a support. Africa repays more in debt servicing than it receives in aid or investment. The IMF and World Bank impose conditions like currency devaluation, privatization, and austerity that stifle real development and sovereignty. These institutions reward countries for following neoliberal policies, not for building strong national industries or Pan-African unity. They don't lend you money to make you rich, they lend you money to keep you small. Africa is rich beyond measure. Africa has 60% of the world's arable land. It can feed itself and the world. It holds over 80 trillion in natural resources, from gold, oil, and cobalt to rare earths and lithium. Africa has a youthful, innovative population and a growing middle class. Pan-African cooperation could unlock regional markets, common currencies, and internal financing, bypassing the need for IMF loans. There are alternatives to the Western system. Intra-African trade, the African Continental Free Trade Area AFCFTA, is a massive opportunity to build wealth from within. African Monetary Fund AMF is still in development, but it could replace the IMF's role for African countries with controlled policies. Resource-backed financing. Countries like Tanzania, Namibia, and Ghana are exploring strategic resource contracts instead of foreign loans. South-South cooperation. Africa can build economic ties with the Global South BRICS, Latin America, Southeast Asia, escaping Western financial dominance. Africa's real challenge is not debt, it's dependence. The US can survive because it created the financial world we live in. Africa can survive without it if it dares to create its own systems. The question is not, can we survive without the IMF? The question is, can we survive another 50 years of being strangled by it? It's time for Africa to create its own credit institutions, build trust between African central banks, use its resources to back its currencies and industries, stop begging for help and start building with boldness. Africa must not ask for a seat at the table. Africa must build its own table, feed its own children, and write its own rules. We don't need the world's permission to rise. We only need unity, vision, and courage. It is time to act now. Subscribe to our channel to join the call for a united African movement.